The orange Combi rattled north along the Stuart Highway. Its engine a steady, tired hum against the vast silence of the Red Center. Joanne sat in the driver's seat, both hands on the wheel, watching the bitumen stretch out in a perfect straight line until it disappeared into the heat haze. In the back, Peter lay stretched out on the thin mattress, one arm over his eyes. He had been driving most of the morning and had finally handed over the wheel after they left Alice Springs. He sat up, pushed the curtain aside, and grinned at her in the rearview mirror. That easy, lopsided smile she had fallen for years ago in England. A pair of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, far back at first, then slowly closing the distance. The other vehicle pulled up alongside them, a white Toyota Land Cruiser Ute with a canopy over the tray. The driver wound down his window and pointed urgently at the back of the Combi. Peter opened his door. Won't be a sec, he stepped out into the cool night air. Instead, a figure appeared at her window, tall, broad, a silver handgun held low but steady. He grabbed her left wrist, twisted it hard behind her. The black cable ties bit into her skin with a sharp plastic click. He dragged her out of the driver's seat. Her knees hit the gravel. Dust rose around them in the thin beam of the Ute's headlights. He shoved her inside and slammed the tailgate. For a moment, there was only darkness and the sound of her own ragged breathing. She rolled onto her side, working her bound hands under her hips and down past her legs until they were in front of her body. She found the edge of the canopy, pushed it up with her shoulder, and dropped out onto the ground. The gravel crunched under her boots. She ran. She threw herself under a thick, low bush and curled into the smallest ball she could manage, pulling her hair over her pale face and knees. The man was walking slowly through the scrub, torch beam sweeping left and right. She could hear him breathing. She stayed perfectly still and crawled over her arms. A small night creature scurried past her face. Time stretched until it felt like hours. Eventually, the engines started again. One vehicle drove away into the dark. The sound of its engine faded slowly, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the Outback. Only when the night had been completely silent for a long time did she dare to crawl out from under the bush. She stumbled back toward the highway. A long time later, the deep rumble of a road train rose out of the darkness. She stepped into their path, arms raised as high as the cable ties would allow. The two truck drivers helped her up into the cab. They turned the road train around and drove her the short distance back to the Barrow Creek Roadhouse. It was just after 1:30 in the morning when the call went through to Alice Springs. By the time the first police vehicle arrived, the sky in the east had begun to pale. The orange Combi was found almost immediately, abandoned a short distance off the road, half hidden by low scrub. The driver's door hung open. There was blood on the gravel near the rear of the van. Not a large amount, but enough. Peter Falconio was not there. Search teams spread out as the sun rose over the McDonnell Ranges in the far distance. The light turned the red dirt the color of old blood. By mid-morning, the entire town knew that something terrible had happened. On the Stuart Highway, the easy, open feeling that had always belonged to the Red Center started to change. Quietly but permanently, Joanne was taken to Alice Springs Hospital for examination, then to a quiet room at the police station. Detectives sat with her for hours. Outside the station windows, the day grew hot and bright. Journalists began to arrive, first local, then from Darwin, then from the southern capitals. Days turned into weeks. The search for Peter Falconio became one of the largest in Northern Territory history. Nothing, no body, no clothing, no clear tracks that led anywhere useful. In Alice Springs, the mood changed. People who had never locked their doors began locking them. Backpackers who once slept in their vans on the edge of town started staying in hostels with security lights. When the formal interviews were finally finished, she flew home to England. The moment the plane lifted off from Alice Springs, she felt the vast red land fall away beneath her. But the weight of it did not. Joanne tried to rebuild something like a normal life. She worked, she saw friends, she answered the same questions from journalists over and over. But at night, the Outback returned to her in dreams. The sound of the cable ties clicking shut, the crunch of gravel under her boots as she ran. The moment she realized Peter was no longer answering. Then, in late 2002, a different crime on the other side of the country finally gave police a name when officers ran his DNA against samples taken from Joanne's t-shirt and the gear stick of the combi. The match was overwhelming. For the first time since that July night, Joanne was shown a photograph and asked a single question: "Is this the man?" She looked at the image for a long time. The heavy mustache, the cold set of the eyes, the same face that had appeared at her window under a sky full of stars. "Yes," she said, "that's him." Darwin, December 2005. The Northern Territory Supreme Court sat under a heavy wet season sky. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension and the low hum of air conditioning. Joanne Lees walked to the witness box for the final time. She took the oath in a clear voice and faced the man sitting in the dock. Bradley John Murdoch was taller than she remembered, broader, but the eyes were the same, cold, watchful. He stared straight ahead while she spoke. On the 13th of December 2005, they returned with their verdict. Guilty of murder, guilty of deprivation of liberty, guilty of aggravated assault. The judge sentenced Bradley Murdoch to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 28 years. As the words were spoken, Joanne sat perfectly still in the public gallery. There was no celebration, only a long, tired breath. Years folded into one another. Bradley Murdoch remained behind high walls, first in Darwin, later in Alice Springs. He never spoke about the night on the Stuart Highway. In July 2025, Bradley Murdoch died in custody in Alice Springs Hospital. Throat cancer. He was 67. In the final weeks, detectives visited him one last time. He died without giving up the secret. Peter Falconio's body has never been found. Somewhere out in the vast red country north of Barrow Creek, beneath spinifex, or in a dry creek bed, or under the hard crust of the desert, the young Englishman who stepped out of an orange combi on a clear winter night remains. The story ends the same way it began, with a long stretch of highway, a sky full of stars, and one man who was never seen again.